Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to another edition of the Church of the Firstborn. I'd like to invite everyone that wants to join this stream. Everyone's welcome. Today, I'm going to start a new book. Last couple days. Hi, Diane. How are you, dear? I'm going to start a new book today. Last couple of days we've been reading Barnabas. And today we're going to start the book of Nicodemus. Now, a little background. I don't know if everyone's familiar or not with who Nicodemus was. If you've read the Bible, you probably know who Nicodemus is. Nicodemus was a ruler, was one of the rulers of the Pharisees, who came to Jesus by night. If anybody remembers the story. And he was saved. The Lord himself led Nicodemus. But after the death of Yeshua, he wrote a book sometime after the death of Yeshua. In the beginning, it was called The Acts of Pontius Pilate. And later they changed the name of it to the Gospel of Nicodemus, because that Nicodemus seemingly wrote the book. But there is no exact date. All they know is it was written around the 2nd or 3rd century after Christ had died. You can find the story of Nicodemus in John chapter 3. If you want to read it later. But he is definitely, they say, the author of this book called Nicodemus. Now, Nicodemus goes by the scripture. Everything written, I've checked it out myself. It's got the scripture references at the bottom of every chapter. And it goes right along with the Bible. And I think that you will recognize some verses in here But Nicodemus had some points in here that is not in our Bibles. That makes some things more understandable. But now this book is focused on Yeshua, the one we call Jesus Christ. Okay? He was there. He was an eyewitness, same as the apostles were. He's a direct witness. And during the early church, for whatever reason, anybody that read it or expounded the book was considered a heretic, and they were cast out of the Roman Catholic Church. But it's definitely a great book. It's one of the books I love. In this volume, it's falling apart, but I'm going to get me a new one of these days. Once again, this is the book. If you'd like to get a copy, this one's falling apart. I've taped it up and everything, trying to keep it together. But I just need to get me a new one that's not falling apart. But I hope you enjoy this book as much as I do. But I'm going to read it to you and hope that you like it. So we're going to start at chapter 1 of the book of Nicodemus. It says, Christ accused to Pilate by the Jews of healing on the Sabbath day, summoned before Pilate by a messenger who does him honor, worshipped by the standards bowing down to him. It's what we're going to read. Annas and Caiaphas and Summas and Datum, Gamaliel, Judas, Levi, Nephilim, Alexander, Cyrus, and other Jews went to Pilate about Jesus, accusing him with many bad crimes. We know that's true, right? And said, we are assured that Jesus is the son of Joseph, the carpenter, and born of Mary, and that he declares himself the Son of God and a king, and not only so, but attempts the dissolution of the Sabbath and the laws of our fathers. Pilate replied, what is it which he declares? And what is it which he attempts dissolving? The Jews told him, we have a law which forbids doing cures on the Sabbath day. But he cures both the lame and the deaf, and those afflicted with the palsy, the blind and lepers and demoniacs on that day by wicked methods. Hi, Tracy. How are you, dear? Good to see you. We just started reading the book of Nicodemus. Pilate replied, how can he do this by wicked methods? They answered, he is a conjurer and casts out devils by the prince of the devils. and so all things become subject to him. Then said Pilate, casting out devils seems not to be the work of an unclean spirit, but to proceed from the power of God. The Jews replied to Pilate, we entreat your highness to summon him to appear before your tribunal and hear him yourself. Then Pilate called a messenger and said to him, by what means will Christ be brought hither? Then went the messenger forth, and knowing Christ, worshipped him. And having spread the cloak which he had in the hand upon the ground, he said, Lord, walk upon this, and go in, for the governor calls thee. When the Jews perceived what the messenger had done, they exclaimed against him to Pilate and said, why did you not give him his summons by a beadle and not by a messenger? For the messenger, when he saw him, worshipped him, and spread the cloak which he had in his hand upon the ground before him, and said to him, Lord, the governor calls thee. Then Pilate called the messenger and said, why hast thou done this? The messenger replied, when thou sentest me from Jerusalem to Alexander, I saw Jesus sitting in a mean figure upon a she-ass, and the children of the Hebrews cried out, Hosanna, holding boughs of trees in their hands. Others spread their garments in the way, and said, save us, thou who art in heaven. Blessed is he who cometh in the name of the Lord. Then the Jews cried out against the messenger and said, the children of the Hebrews made their acclamations in the Hebrew language. And how couldst thou art a Greek, understand the Hebrew? The messenger answered them and said, I asked one of the Jews and said, what is this which the children do cry out in the Hebrew language? And he explained it to me, saying, their cry out, Hosanna, which being interpreted is, O Lord, save me, or Lord, save me. Pilate then said to them, why do you yourselves testify to the words spoken by the children, namely by your silence? And what has the messenger done amiss? And they were silent. Then the governor said unto the messenger, go forth and endeavor by any means to bring him in. But the messenger went forth and did as before, and saith, Lord, come in, for the governor calleth thee. And as Jesus was going in by the ensigns, who carried the standards, the tops of them bowed down and worshipped Jesus. Whereupon the Jews exclaimed more vehemently against the ensigns. But Pilate said to the Jews, I know it is not pleasing to you that the tops of the standards did of themselves bow and worship Jesus, but why do you exclaim against the ensigns, as if they had bowed and worshipped? They replied to Pilate, we saw the ensigns themselves bowing and worshiping Jesus. Then the governor called the ensigns and said unto them, why did you do thus? The ensigns said to Pilate, we are all pagans and worship the gods in temples, and how should we think anything about worshiping him? We only held the standards in our hands. and they bowed themselves and worshipped him. Then said Pilate to the rulers of the synagogue, Do ye yourselves choose some strong men, and let us see whether they will then bend of themselves? Boy, they're stubborn, aren't they? Well, Tracy, I'm inside of my house in the living room. I would do it outside, but there was some kids out there riding their four-wheelers and stuff, and it was a little too noisy. I don't hear them now, but a little noisy, and I wouldn't think you could hear me over them. All right. Continue on. Then said Pilate to the rulers of the synagogue, Do ye yourselves choose some strong men, and let them hold the standards, and we shall see whether they will then bend of themselves. So the elders of the Jews sought out 12 of the most strong and able old men, and made them hold the standards. And they stood in the presence of the governor. Then Pilate said to the messenger, Take Jesus out, and by some means bring him in again. And Jesus and the messenger went out of the hall. And Pilate called the ensigns who before had borne the standards, and swore to them that if they had not borne the standards in that manner, when Jesus before entered in, he would cut off their heads. Then the governor commanded Jesus to come in again, and the messenger did as he had done before, and very much entreated Jesus that he would go upon his cloak and walk on it. And he did walk upon it and went in. And when Jesus went in, the standards bowed themselves as before and worshipped him. Now when Pilate saw this, he was afraid, and was about to rise from his seat. But while he thought to rise, his own wife stood at a distance, sent to him, saying, Have thou nothing to do with that just man? For I have suffered much concerning him in a vision this night. When the Jews heard this, they said to Pilate, Did we not say unto thee, He is a conjurer? Behold, he hath caused thy wife to dream. Pilate then calling Jesus said, Thou hast heard what they testify against thee, and makest no answer? Jesus replied, If they had not a power speaking, they could not have spoke. But because everyone has the command of his own tongue to speak both good and bad, let him look to it. But the elders of the Jews answered and said to Jesus, What shall we look to? In the first place, we know this concerning thee, that thou wast born through fornication. Secondly, that upon the account of thy birth the infants were slain in Bethlehem. Thirdly, that thy father and mother Mary fled into Egypt, because they could not trust their own people. Some of the Jews who stood by spake more favorably. We cannot say that he was born through fornication, but we know that his mother Mary was betrothed to Joseph, and so he was not born through fornication. Then said Pilate to the Jews who affirmed him to be born through fornication, This is your account. This your account is not true. saying there was a betrothment, as they testify, who are of your own nation. Annas and Caiaphas spake to Pilate, all this multitude of people is to be regarded, who cry out that he was born through fornication, and is a conjurer. But they who deny him to be born through fornication are his proselytes and disciples. Pilate answered Annas and Caiaphas, who are the proselytes? They answered, they are those who are the children of pagans, and are not become Jews, but followers of him. Then replied Eleazar, and Astris, and Astonius, and James, Carus, and Samuel, Isaac, and Phanes, Crispus, and Agrippa, Annas, and Judas. We are not proselytes, but children of Jews, and speak the truth, and were present when Mary was betrothed. Then Pilate, addressing himself to the 12 men who spake this, said to them, I conjure you by the life of Caesar, that ye faithfully declare whether he was born through fornication, and those things be true which ye have related. They answered Pilate, we have a law whereby we are forbid to swear, it being a sin. Let them swear by the life of Caesar that it is not as we have said, and we will be contented to be put to death. Then said Annas and Caiaphas to Pilate, those 12 men will not believe that we know him to be basely born, and to be a conjurer, although he pretends that he is the Son of God, and a king, which we are so far from believing that we tremble to hear. Then Pilate commanded every one to go out, except the 12 men who said he was not born through fornication, and Jesus to withdraw to a distance, and said to them, why have the Jews a mind to kill Jesus? And they answered him, they are angry because he wrought cures on the Sabbath day. Pilate said, will they kill him for a good work? They said unto him, yes, sir. They were very stubborn, wasn't they? I mean, every account you read of them, especially in the 4 Gospels, they just hated his guts. Then Pilate, filled with anger, went out of the hall and said to the Jews, I call the whole world to witness that I find no fault in this man. The Jews replied to Pilate, if he had not been a wicked person, we had not brought him before thee. Pilate said to them, do ye take him and try him by your law? Then the Jews said, it is not lawful for us to put anyone to death. Pilate said to the Jews, the command therefore, thou shalt not kill, belongs to you, but not to me. And he went again into the hall, and called Jesus by himself, and said to him, art thou the King of the Jews? And Jesus answering said to Pilate, dost thou speak this of thyself, or did the Jews tell it thee concerning me? Pilate answering said to Jesus, am I a Jew? The whole nation and rulers of the Jews have delivered thee up to me. What hast thou done? Jesus answering said, My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight, and I should not have been delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from hence. Pilate said, Art thou a king then? Jesus answered, Thou sayest that I am a king. To this end was I born, and for this end came I into the world. And for this purpose I came, that I should bear witness to the truth. And every one who is of the truth heareth my voice. Pilate saith to him, What is truth? Jesus said, Truth is from heaven. Pilate said, Therefore truth is not on earth. Jesus said to Pilate, Believe that truth is on the earth, among those who, when they have the power of judgment, are governed by the truth, and form right judgment. Then Pilate left Jesus in the hall, and went out to the Jews, and said, I find not any one fault in Jesus. The Jews said to him, But he said, I can destroy the temple of God, and in 3 days build it up again. Pilate said unto them, What sort of temple is that of which he speaketh? The Jews saying to him, That which Solomon was 46 years in building. He said he would destroy it and in 3 days build it up. Pilate said to them again, I am innocent from the blood of that man. Do ye look to it? The Jews said to him, His blood be upon us and our children. Then Pilate, calling together the elders and scribes, priests and Levites, saith to them privately, Do not act thus. I have found nothing in your charge against him concerning his curing sick persons and breaking the Sabbath worthy of death. The priests and Levites replied to Pilate, By the life of Caesar, if anyone be a blasphemer, he is worthy of death. But this man hath blasphemed against the Lord. Then the governor again commanded the Jews to depart out of the hall. And calling Jesus said to him, What shall I do with thee? Jesus answered him, Do according as it is written. Pilate said to him, How is it written? Jesus saith to him, Moses and the prophets have prophesied concerning my suffering and resurrection. The Jews hearing this were provoked, and said to Pilate, Why they're just junk calls. It's the Republican National Committee keeps calling me and wanting donations. All right. Sorry for the interruption. Jesus saith to him, Moses and the prophets have prophesied concerning my suffering and resurrection. The Jews hearing this were provoked and said to Pilate, Why wilt thou any longer hear the blasphemy of that man? Pilate said to them, If these words seem to you blasphemy, do ye take him, bring him to your court, and try him according to your law. The Jews replied to Pilate, Our law saith he shall be obliged to receive 39 stripes. But if after this manner he shall blaspheme against the Lord, he shall be stoned. Pilate saith unto them, If that speech of his was blasphemy, do ye try him according to your law? The Jews say to Pilate, Our law commands us not to put anyone to death, because he deserves the death of the cross. Pilate says to them, It is not fit he should be crucified. Let him be only whipped and sent away. But when the governor looked upon the people that were present, and the Jews, he saw many of the Jews in tears, and said to the chief priest of the Jews, All the people do not desire his death. The elders of the Jews answered to Pilate, We and all the people came hither for this very purpose, that he should die. Pilate saith to them, Why should he die? They said to him, Because he declares himself to be the Son of God and a king. But Nicodemus, a certain Jew, stood before the governor and said, I entreat thee, O righteous judge, that thou wouldst favor me with the liberty of speaking a few words. Pilate said to him, Speak on. Nicodemus said, I spake to the elders of the Jews and the scribes and priests and Levites, and all the multitude of the Jews in their assembly. What is it ye would do with this man? He is a man who hath wrought many useful and glorious miracles ever wrought before, nor will ever work. Let him go, and do him no harm. If he cometh from God, his miracles will continue, but if from men, they will come to naught. Thus Moses, when he was sent by God into Egypt, wrought the miracles which God commanded him before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And though the magicians of that country, Jannes and Jambres, wrought by their magic the same miracles which Moses did, yet they could not work all which he did. And the miracles which the magicians wrought were not of God, as ye know. Of scribes and Pharisees, but they who wrought them perished, and all who believed them. And now let this man go, because the very miracles for which ye accuse him are from God, and he is not worthy of death. The Jews said to Nicodemus, Art thou become his disciple, and making speeches in his favor? Nicodemus said to them, Is the governor become his disciple also? And does he make speeches for him? Did not Caesar place him in that high post? When the Jews heard this, they trembled, and gnashed their teeth at Nicodemus, and said to him, Mayest thou receive his doctrine for truth, and have thy lot with Christ? Nicodemus replied, Amen. I will receive his doctrine, and my lot with him, as ye have said. Then another certain Jew rose up, and desired leave of the governor to hear him a few words. And the governor said, Speak what thou hast a mind. And he said, I lay for 38 years by the sheep pool at Jerusalem, laboring under a great infirmity, and waiting for a cure which should be wrought by the coming of an angel, who at a certain time troubled the water. And whosoever first after the troubling of the water stepped in was made whole of whatsoever disease he had. And when Jesus saw me languishing there, he said to me, Wilt thou be made whole? And I answered, Sir, I have no man when the water is troubled to put me into the pool. And he said unto me, Rise, take up thy bed and walk. And I was made immediately whole. And Jesus then said to Pilate, Our Lord Governor, pray, ask him what day it was on which he was cured of his infirmity. Then the infirm person replied, It was on the Sabbath. The Jews said to Pilate, Did we not say that he wrought his cures on the Sabbath and cast out devils by the prince of devils? Then another certain Jew came forth and said, I was blind, could hear sounds, but could not see anyone. And as Jesus was going along, I heard the multitude passing by. And I asked what was there. They told me that Jesus was passing by. Then I cried out, saying, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And he stood still and commanded that I should be brought to him, and said to me, What wilt thou? I said, Lord, that I may receive my sight. He said to me, Receive thy sight. And presently I saw and followed him, rejoicing and giving thanks. Another Jew also came forth and said, I was a leper, and he cured me by his word, only saying, I will, be thou clean. And presently I was cleansed from my leprosy. And another Jew came forth and said, I was crooked, and he made me straight by his word. And a certain woman named Veronica said, I was afflicted with an issue of blood 12 years, and I touched the hem of his garments, and presently the issue of my blood stopped. The Jews then said, We have a law that a woman shall not be allowed as an evidence. And after other things, another Jew said, I saw Jesus invited to a wedding with his disciples, and there was a want of wine in Cana of Galilee. And when the wine was all drank, he commanded the servants that they should fill 6 pots, which were there with water, and they filled them up to the brim. And he blessed them, and turned the water into wine. And all the people drank, being surprised at this miracle. And another Jew stood forth and said, I saw Jesus teaching in the synagogue at Capernaum. And there was in the synagogue a certain man who had a devil, and he cried out, saying, Let me alone. What have we to do with thee, Jesus of Nazareth? Art thou come to destroy us? I know that thou art the Holy One of God. And Jesus rebuked him, saying, Hold thy peace, unclean spirit, and come out of the man. And presently he came out of him, and did not at all hurt him. The following things were also said by a Pharisee. I saw that a great company came to Jesus from Galilee and Judea and the sea coast, and many countries round about Jordan, and many infirm persons came to him, and he healed them all. And I heard the unclean spirits crying out and saying, Thou art the Son of God. And Jesus strictly charged them that they should not make him known. After this, another person, whose name was Centurio, said, I saw Jesus in Capernaum, and I entreated him, saying, Lord, my servant lieth at home sick of the palsy. And Jesus said to me, I will come and cure him. But I said, Lord, I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof, but only speak the word, and my servant shall be healed. And Jesus said unto me, Go thy way, and as thou hast believed, so be it done unto thee. And my servant was healed from that same hour. Then a certain nobleman said, I had a son in Capernaum, who lay at the point of death. And when I heard that Jesus was come into Galilee, I went besought him that he would come down to my house and heal my son, for he was at the point of death. He said to me, Go thy way, thy son liveth. And my son was cured from that hour. Besides these also many others of the Jews, both men and women, cried out and said, He is truly the Son of God, who cures all diseases only by his word, and to whom the devils are altogether subject. Some of them further said, This power can proceed from none but God. Pilate said to the Jews, Why are not the devils subject to your doctors? Some of them said, The power of subjecting devils cannot proceed but from God. But others said to Pilate that he had raised Lazarus from the dead, after he had been 4 days in the grave. The governor, hearing this, trembling, said to the multitude of the Jews, What will it profit you to shed innocent blood? Then a certain nobleman said, done that one. Sorry. Chapter 6. Then Pilate, having called together Nicodemus and the 15 men who said that Jesus was not born through fornication, said to them, What shall I do? Saying, There is like to be a tumult again among the people. They said unto him, We know not. Let them look to it, who raised the tumult. Pilate then called the multitude again and said to them, You know that ye have a custom, that I should release to you one prisoner at the feast of the Passover. I have a noted prisoner, a murderer, who's called Barabbas, and Jesus, who's called Christ, in whom I find nothing that deserves death. Which of them therefore have you in mind that I should release to you? They all cry out and say, Release to us Barabbas. Pilate said to them, What then shall I do with Jesus, who is called Christ? They all answer, Let him be crucified. And they cry out and say to Pilate, You are not the friend of Caesar, if you release this man, for he hath declared that he is the Son of God and a king. But are you inclined that he should be a king and not Caesar? Then Pilate, filled with anger, said to them, Your nation hath always been seditious, and you are always against those who have been serviceable to you. The Jews replied, Who are those who have been serviceable to us? Pilate answered them, Your God who delivered you from the bondage of the Egyptians and brought you over the Red Sea as though it had been dry land, and fed you in the wilderness with manna and the flesh of quails, and brought water out of the rock, and gave you a law from heaven. Ye provoked him always, and desired for yourselves a molten calf, and worshipped it, and sacrificed to it, and said, These are thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt. On account of which your God was inclined to destroy you. But Moses interceded for you, and your God heard him and forgave your iniquity. Afterwards ye were enraged against, and would have killed your prophets, Moses and Aaron, when they fled to the tabernacle. And ye were always murmuring against God and his prophets. And arising from his judgment seat, he would have gone out. But the Jews all cried out, We acknowledge Caesar to be king, and not Jesus. Whereas this person, as soon as he was born, the wise men came, and offered gifts unto him, which when Herod heard, he was exceedingly troubled, and would have killed him. When his father knew this, he fled with him and his mother Mary into Egypt. Herod, when he heard he was born, would have slain him, and accordingly sent and slew all the children, of which were in Bethlehem, and all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under. When Pilate heard this account, he was afraid, and commanding silence among the people who made a noise, he said to Jesus, Art thou therefore a king? All the Jews replied to Pilate, He is the very person whom Herod sought to have slain. Then Pilate, taking water, washed his hands before the people, and said, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. Look ye to it. The Jews answered and said, His blood be upon us and our children. Then Pilate commanded Jesus to be brought before him, and spake to him in the following words, Thy own nation hath charged thee, as making thyself a king. Wherefore I, Pilate, sentence thee to be whipped, according to the laws of former governors, and that thou be first bound, then hanged upon the cross, in that place where thou art now a prisoner, and also 2 criminals with thee, whose names are Demas and Justus. So what do y'all think so far? Goes right along with the scriptures, doesn't it? But there's little details in there when it come to those who spoke up for Jesus. So I told you, it's a pretty good book. Hi, Barry. How are you? Yeah, I thought this would be a good story since it's Sunday is Easter. Thought this would be a good one. So you see how it follows the Bible. I mean, it follows it exactly, but there's just those little details in there that our Bible doesn't mention. You know, that there are people fussing and fighting, but, you know, you never heard their testimonies. And I love it myself personally. it just strengthens my faith even more, you know. Every time I read these books, they strengthen my faith in God and the Lord Yeshua. Well, I'm glad you're doing very well, Barry. Glad to see you here, brother. Well, I'm going to finish reading this to a few more chapters maybe, and we'll read some more tomorrow. Chapter 7. Then Jesus went out of the hall, and the 2 thieves with him. And when they came to the place which is called Golgotha, they stripped him of his raiment, and girt him about with a linen cloth, and put a crown of thorns upon his head, and put a reed in his hand. And in like manner did they to the 2 thieves who were crucified with him, Demas on his right hand and Justus on his left. But Jesus said, My Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they divided his garments, upon his vesture they cast lots. The people in the meantime stood by, and the chief priests and elders of the Jews mocked him, saying, He saved others, let him now save himself if he can, if he be the Son of God. Let him now come down from the cross. The soldiers also mocked him, and taking vinegar and gall offered it to him to drink, and said to him, If thou art King of the Jews, deliver thyself. Then Longinus, a certain soldier, taking a spear, pierced his side, and presently there came forth blood and water. And Pilate wrote the title upon the cross in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek letters, This is the King of the Jews. But one of the 2 thieves who were crucified with Jesus, whose name was Justus, said to Jesus, If thou art the Christ, deliver thyself and us. But the thief who was crucified on his right hand, whose name was Demas, answering rebuked him and said, Dost not thou fear God, who art condemned to this punishment? We indeed receive rightly and justly the demerit of our actions. But this Jesus, what evil hath he done? After this groaning, he said to Jesus, Lord, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. Jesus answering said to him, Verily I say unto thee, that this day thou shalt be with me in paradise. And it was about the 6th hour, and darkness was upon the face of the whole earth until the 9th hour. And while the sun was eclipsed, behold, the veil of the temple was rent from the top to the bottom, and the rocks also were rent, and the graves opened, and many bodies of the saints which slept arose. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which being interpreted is, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And after these things Jesus said, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. And having said this, he gave up the ghost. But when the centurion saw that Jesus thus crying out, gave up the ghost, he glorified God, and said, Of a truth, this was a just man. And all the people who stood by were exceedingly troubled at the sight, and reflecting upon what he passed, smote upon their breast, and then returned to the city of Jerusalem. The centurion went to the governor and related to him all that he passed. And when he had heard all these things, he was exceeding sorrowful. And calling the Jews together, said to them, Have ye seen the miracle of the sun's eclipse, and the other things which came to pass while Jesus was dying? Which when the Jews heard, they answered to the governor, The eclipse of the sun happened according to its usual custom. But all those who were the acquaintance of Christ stood at a distance, as did the women who had followed Jesus from Galilee, observing all things. And behold, a certain man of Arimathea, named Joseph, who was also a disciple of Jesus, but not openly so, for fear of the Jews, came to the governor and entreated the governor that he would give him leave to take away the body of Jesus from the cross. And the governor gave him leave. And Nicodemus came, bringing with him a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 pound weight. And they took down Jesus from the cross with tears, and bound him with linen cloths, with spices according to the custom of burying among the Jews, and placed him in a new tomb, which Joseph had built, and caused to be cut out of a rock, in which never any man had been put. And they rolled a great stone to the door of the sepulchre. When the unjust Jews heard what Joseph had begged and buried the body of Jesus, they sought after Nicodemus, and those 15 men who had testified before the governor that Jesus was not born through fornication, and other good persons who had shown any good actions toward him. But when they all concealed themselves through fear of the Jews, Nicodemus alone showed himself to them, and said, How can such persons as these enter into the synagogue? The Jews answered him, But how durst thou enter into the synagogue, who wast a confederate with Christ? Let thy lot be along with him in the other world. Nicodemus answered, Amen. So may it be that I may have my lot with him in his kingdom. In like manner Joseph, when he came to the Jews, said to them, Why are ye angry with me for desiring the body of Jesus of Pilate? Behold, I have put him in my tomb, and wrapped him up in clean linen, and put a stone at the door of the sepulchre. I have acted rightly towards him, but ye have acted unjustly against that just person, in crucifying him, giving him vinegar to drink, crowning him with thorns, tearing his body with whips, and prayed down the guilt of his blood upon you. The Jews at the hearing of this were disquieted and troubled, and they seized Joseph, and commanded him to be put in custody before the Sabbath, and kept there till the Sabbath was over. And they said to him, Make confession, for at this time it is not lawful to do thee any harm, till the first day of the week come. But we know that thou wilt not be brought worthy of a burial, but he will give thy flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth. Joseph answered That speech is like the speech of proud Goliath, who reproached the living God in speaking against David. But ye scribes and doctors know that God saith by the prophet, Vengeance is mine, and I will repay to you evil equal to that which ye have threatened me. The God whom you have hanged upon the cross is able to deliver me out of your hands. All your wickedness will return upon you. For the governor, when he washed his hands, said, I am clear from the blood of this just person. But ye answered and cried out, His blood be upon us and our children. According as ye have said, may ye perish forever. The elders of the Jews hearing these words were exceedingly enraged. And seizing Joseph, they put him into a chamber where there was no window. They fastened the door and put a seal upon the lock. And Annas and Caiaphas placed a guard upon it, and took counsel with the priests and Levites that they should all meet after the Sabbath day. And they contrived to what death they should put Joseph. When they had done this, the rulers, Annas and Caiaphas, ordered Joseph to be brought forth. When all the assembly heard this, they admired and were astonished, because they found the same seal upon the lock of the chamber, and could not find Joseph. Oh, cool. I always loved that movie, Tracy Lee. Love the Ten Commandments. Then Annas and Caiaphas went forth while they were all admiring at Joseph's being gone. Behold, one of the soldiers who kept the sepulchre of Jesus spake in the assembly, that while they were guarding the sepulchre of Jesus, there was an earthquake. And we saw the angel of God roll away the stone of the sepulchre and sat upon it. And his countenance was like lightning, and his garment like snow. And we became through fear like persons dead. And we heard an angel saying to the women at the sepulchre of Jesus, Do not fear. I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. He is risen as he foretold. Come and see the place where he was laid, and go presently and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead, and he will go before you into Galilee, and there ye shall see him as he told you. Then the Jews called together all the soldiers who kept the sepulchre of Jesus, and said to them, Who are those women to whom the angel spoke? Why did ye not seize them? The soldiers answered and said, We know not whom the women were. Besides, we became as dead persons through fear, and how could we seize those women? The Jews said to them, As the Lord liveth, we do not believe you. The soldiers answering said to the Jews, When you saw and heard Jesus working so many miracles, and did not believe him, how should ye believe us? Ye well said, As the Lord liveth, for the Lord truly does live. We have heard that ye shut up Joseph, who buried the body of Jesus in the chamber under a lock which was sealed, and when ye opened it, found him not there. Do ye then produce Joseph, whom ye put under guard in the chamber, and we will produce Jesus, whom we guarded in the sepulchre. The Jews answered and said, We will produce Joseph. do ye produce Jesus? But Joseph is in his own city of Arimathea. The soldiers replied, If Joseph be in Arimathea and Jesus in Galilee, we heard then the angel inform the women. The Jews hearing this were afraid, and said among themselves, If by any means these things should become public, then everybody will believe in Jesus. Then they gathered a large sum of money, and gave it to the soldiers, saying, Do ye tell the people that the disciples of Jesus came in the night when they were asleep, and stole away the body of Jesus. And if Pilate the governor should hear of this, ye will satisfy him and secure you. The soldiers accordingly took the money and said as they were instructed by the Jews. And their report was spread abroad among all the people. But a certain priest, Phinehas, a schoolmaster and a Levite, named Aggius, they three came from Galilee to Jerusalem, and told the chief priests and all who were in the synagogue, saying, We have seen Jesus, whom ye crucified, talking with his 11 disciples, and sitting in the midst of them in Mount Olive, and saying to them, Go forth into the whole world, preaching the gospel to all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. And whosoever shall believe and be baptized shall be saved. And when he had said these things to his disciples, we saw him ascending up to heaven. When the chief priests and elders and Levites heard these things, they said to these three men, Give glory to the God of Israel, and make confession to him, whether those things are true, which ye say ye have seen and heard. They answering said, As the Lord of our fathers liveth, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, according as we heard Jesus talking with his disciples, and according as we saw him ascending up to heaven, so we have related the truth to you. And the three men further answered and said, adding these words, If we should not own the words which we heard Jesus speak, and that we saw him ascending into heaven, we should be guilty of sin. Then the chief priest immediately rose up, and holding the book of the law in their hands, conjured these men, saying, Ye shall no more hereafter declare those things which ye have spoken concerning Jesus. And they gave them a large sum of money, and sent other persons along with them, who should conduct them to their own country, that they might not by any means make any stay at Jerusalem. Then the Jews did assemble all together, and having expressed the most lamentable concern, said, What is this extraordinary thing which is come to pass in Jerusalem? But Annas and Caiaphas comforted them, saying, Why should we believe the soldiers who guarded the sepulchre of Jesus, in telling us that an angel rolled away the stone from the door of the sepulchre? Perhaps his own disciples told them this, and gave them money, that they should say so, and they themselves took away the body of Jesus. Besides, consider this, that there is no credit to be given to foreigners, because they also took a large sum of us, and they have declared us according to the instructions which we gave them, They must either be faithful to us or to the disciples of Jesus. Well, what do you all think so far? Do you like it? I hope you all enjoyed that. I'll read the rest of it tomorrow. But I hope you all enjoyed it. And it being Easter, what a heck of a story. Got a lot of detail to it, doesn't it? I love it. You're welcome, Tracy. All of you are welcome. I love doing this. I really do. I love to read anything that concerns the Bible. There's so many good ones out there that I just don't understand why they're not in the Bible. But, that's the Roman Catholic Church for you. They give you what only they want you to know. And that's it. But I love them. But like I said before, there's some in there that ain't biblical to me. And you have to read them very carefully. But, I mean, like Barnabas and Apostle Paul to the Laodiceans. There's several others in there. The books of Adam and Eve. I love to read them. And the reason I love to read them is shows you the true nature of Satan and what he's like and his demons. He hates that book, and every time that you try to read it over the air, he hates it. And he hates Enoch too because gives names and what they done. And he just hates it, man. Both of them. He hates them two books. Because every time I tried to read it back in the earlier years, 4 or 5 years ago, for no reason my stream would quit. And then I go to pray about it, and then it would come back on, and he wouldn't bother me no more after that. But he hates them. But there's so many good books in here. But there's some, you got to read them carefully, though. But they are some of them, that doesn't agree with Scripture. You got to be careful with them. But I love the book of Clement. Clement's a good one. Hermas is a good one. There's several good ones in there. Well, Tracy, one of these days, I'll read some of them, try to help you understand some of them. Because they're written in the same language as the King James. But Yeah, that's a good thing you want to do, Barry, is pray beforehand. The Lord He'll help you understand. If you want the understanding of something, just ask the good Lord. You know, I tell you, here's the truth. I don't have no doctorate of divinity. I don't have no PhD or nothing like that. I never went to school to learn about the Bible. The school I studied under was the good Lord Himself. And, that's where my knowledge comes from, honestly, is from the good Lord. You know, people always have the excuse, well, I just don't understand the Bible, that's why I don't understand it. Well, 1 Peter, he says, ask. If any lack wisdom, ask, and the Lord will give it to you freely. All you have to do is ask the good Lord, and He'll teach you. He's taught me for 50 years. I got saved when I was 9 years old, guys. I was young. But see, I had Christian parents when I was born. I'm the only boy in the family. I have 3 sisters, but I'm the oldest. I'm the only boy born in the Baker family, believe it or not. All my dad's brothers and sisters had girls. But I got saved when I was 9 years old. And my sister next to me and my middle sister got saved the same night. All right, Shawnee, I love you too. You have a good one. But no, I got saved when I was 9 years old. And I've always had a desire after I got saved to read the Bible. And for the last 50 years, I don't care what job I had, I would always find time in the morning to get up, read out of the Bible a little bit, and get dressed and go to work. That's what I do today. I spend a lot of time with the good Lord. I get up first thing in the morning and, I put on my prayer shawl and pray to the good Lord, and then I'll grab my Bible and I'll read chapter 2 out of it, and then sometimes I'll put my prayer shawl on and I'll go take a walk out in the woods and talk to the good Lord. I do it all the time. 2 or 3, sometimes 4 times a day I'll do that. But I love talking to my Lord. And I thank Him for all of you. I really do. I love all of you out there, and I enjoy you having you here to listen to me. And I appreciate you all for your comments. Appreciate it, and just pray for me and keep me in your prayers, and I hope that I can get more followers on here. And I have a desire in my heart to see people saved. I want to see people come to Yeshua. And here lately, He hasn't wanted me to prophesy for a long time, but He's been wanting me since to preach and teach the gospel. He's wanting me to preach salvation to the lost. And that's why I haven't done any prophesying lately. He just wants me to try and get people saved because He's coming. And I can't wait to see Him. I just can't wait to see my Lord and to live with Him for all of eternity. But I love you guys. I hope you have a good evening. I'm going to get off here and go get something to eat. But I hope you all have a blessed evening. God bless all of you. And I'll see you all tomorrow. Some of you in the morning, and see you again here tomorrow evening. Well, no. Tomorrow's Saturday, isn't it? Well, I'll have my message ready for tomorrow, for the Sabbath day. I love y'all. Have a good one. I'll see you in the morning for service at 9 a.m. Bye for now. God bless all of you.